Welcome into Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Got a great show lined up for you. Later on, we're going to be talking Browns with Ashley Bastock of cleveland.com. But we begin talking with the D-man from WTAM 1100, Dennis Manoloff, where earlier today, Kurt Warner put out a video breaking down the performance of Browns quarterback Baker Mayfield against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday.
Here's another one. We're in a situation where we're coming out and we run this little hook, and then we're running a flat right here. Okay, I want you to watch Chubb on this particular play. He's running a flat route. Flat route, get past the line of scrimmage, and flatten. What happens? He comes like this. Okay, we're going to look at this and go, oh, how the heck can Baker miss that throw? Well, look at Chubb. He continues to run up the field the whole time. He never stops, gets to his depth and flattens it. He's continuing to run up the field when Baker's throwing it for him to flatten it. So if you get the ball and he's going here and he catches it right there, oh, you tell me, does he get the first down? At least sets him up for a short third down. And instead, you see Baker jumping up and down like, come on, man, you got to be flat right there. That was on 1st and 5. We're setting ourselves up for another first down. He's falling up the field. We're all yelling at Baker. That's not on Baker.
Let's bring in the D-man, Dennis Manoloff from WTAM 1100 and 106.9 FM. D-man, you know, when it comes to Baker Mayfield, obviously he's been a lightning rod when it comes to takes and opinions throughout this season, and he's been dealing with his injuries, but how much blame do you kind of put on Baker for the state of the offense as it is?
He definitely gets a significant slice of the pie. He's not the entire problem. You can spread it around. Kevin Stefanski and the play calls, the receivers, the line, the usual suspects. I mean, it is truly a team effort that has dragged this offense into the sewer. But I'll get the defense of Mayfield in those types of situations. That was a pretty clear route that wasn't run succinctly by Nick Chubb, and Nick Chubb is not known for his route running and his pass catching, so maybe that's to be expected. What I don't understand from that game, and I know this is going on a little bit of a tangent, Mac, but Kareem Hunt, okay, he was coming back from the leg injury, but Kareem Hunt is a Swiss Army knife. He's a guy that's more than capable of catching balls out of the backfield. The Browns desperately needed running backs to catch balls against the Ravens because the receivers weren't getting it done and the tight ends weren't getting it done. Kareem Hunt had 0 catches for 0 yards. I don't, that's mind-blowing to me. And he had 1 target. It was supposed to be a screen pass that got blown up. So that speaks to play calling or losing track of a guy during the course of a game. So it really has been a combination of factors, and it's very disappointing. Of all the things that those of us who want to see the Browns succeed didn't think we would have to worry about, offense was at the top of the list going into the season. And instead, you're sitting here wondering how are the Browns going to score 20 points?
Well, and D-Man, the other thing that I also look at as well is, we had seen this and this tweet from PFF Patriots on Twitter as well. I look at, since week 9, Nick Chubb clearly up there when it comes to most 10-plus yard rushes among running backs. Jonathan Taylor at number 1 and Ramondre Stevenson tied with Nick Chubb there with 12. But the production when it comes to Nick Chubb on the ground, it's clearly there, but it's just a process of figuring out what they want to do, and especially for the Baltimore Ravens, got to give them credit. They did a good job at stopping the run and having a good game plan against the Browns on Sunday night.
Absolutely, and they committed to it, and they dared Baker Mayfield to beat them, more specifically, Baker Mayfield and his weapons, his receiving core, and said, all right, we are going to quote-unquote stack the box. We're more often than not going to put 8 guys in the box, and we're determined to limit what Chubb and perhaps Hunt can do on the ground against us. Okay, and I said during the course of the game, why aren't the Browns running more? And I was getting hit on Twitter with, oh, don't you understand? the Ravens have an 8-man box. Well, first of all, you mean to tell me every running team in the history of the NFL that's ever encountered an 8-man box has never been able to do anything? Like, just because the other team, puts a lot of people in there and gets near the line of scrimmage with a lot of guys, all of a sudden you have to abandon the run. You can't do it. I don't think that's true. And even if it is true, or even if you are stuck in the mud with the running game, you got to have counters to the 8-man box. I mean, the Browns had to know what the Ravens were going to do. And if they didn't know, they knew right away in the game. They knew early in the game, okay, this is what they're committed to doing. What is our counter to the 8-man box? And you never really saw it from the Browns offense. So, to me, it was just another disappointment, because this was a game where the defense put you in position to win the game. The defense gets a lot of grief, but you know what? The defense scored limited the Ravens to 16 points last Sunday. All you needed was 17 to win. And the offense couldn't even get near that. They only scored 10.
Yeah, and D-Man, I saw this on Twitter yesterday, and it was a QB help composite score. So basically, looking at the rest of the surrounding cast, surrounding a quarterback, and as you can see in the graphic here, Josh Allen leading the NFL at 100%. You have Jalen Hurts and Mac Jones. Mac Jones obviously getting a lot of love in his rookie season, but you have Kyler Murray, hell, even Tom Brady up there at number 5. But down at number 9, just behind Pat Mahomes, is you have Baker Mayfield. And the one thing that I look at compared to all those other quarterbacks is the open rate for those wide receivers that are getting open clearly. And at that point, it's up to some of those receivers to go ahead and make some of those plays, where you had somebody like a Donovan Peoples-Jones with a couple of tough drops, and David Njoku has had some struggles in the past as well. I look at some of those receivers that are struggling when it comes to catching the ball when Baker does deliver on some of those passes. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's crazy how many statistics and how many metrics we get these days.
There's a stat for everything nowadays.
Everybody's got a new formula to figure things out. And you know what? You could sit down with somebody who is very bright and loves Baker Mayfield, and you could defend him till the cows come home. And you could also sit down with somebody who's very bright and doesn't like Baker Mayfield, and that person could criticize him till the cows come home. It's that crazy of a time that we live in. And in the case of the receivers, the Browns don't have a burner. All right, it's no secret. I mean, Anthony Schwartz was supposed to be their burner, even beyond Odell Beckham Jr. While you don't really have Schwartz for all intents and purposes, and Beckham is out, he made himself a cut-worthy guy, and he asked to be released, and he was. So you don't have burners on this team. You don't really have any stars. I mean, I know Jarvis Landry gets a lot of love in this town, and deservedly so for a lot of things, okay? Jarvis is a pro's pro. I love him. Mac loves him. We all love him. But he's not a star, okay? He's a solid to good NFL receiver. And to expect him to be electric night in and night out, or game in and game out, is just not a realistic expectation. So it is true that Baker Mayfield is throwing to a receiving core that is not exactly full of Jerry Rice and John Taylor and all kinds of guys like that. In light of that, I wish the tight end room was better. All right, the tight ends, they got to be more consistent. They got to be better. Austin Hooper got paid a chunk of money. He's been a colossal disappointment. David Njoku, sometimes good, sometimes bad. He needs to be more consistent. Harrison Bryant, I mean, who knows? So of the two groups that primarily catch passes, the tight ends and the receivers, I'm more disappointed actually in the tight ends, because I thought they had more talent to, per capita, if you will, than the receivers.
Yeah, and I would agree with you there as well. And the other part of it too, D-Man, you mentioned there with Jarvis where, he's somebody who can be good for you. You can't necessarily expect him to be electric every single game, but, he's somebody who has been dealing with injuries. And the one thing that I've noticed throughout this season is you go back to the Jedrick Wills injury against Kansas City. They rush him back for the following week against the Houston Texans. He re-injures that, and that gets aggravated as the season goes on. So when it comes to the handling of injuries from Kevin Stefanski, do you have any kind of question marks when it comes to the way that he's handled this season, the way that he's handled some of these injuries throughout the year?
You know what, Mac? I don't go there because, number one, I am not in the player's body, so I have no idea what the player is experiencing, what each individual player is experiencing. Number two, I'm not at that facility. I'm not one of the medical personnel that's checking on these guys every day. And I'm not at the facility anyway covering the team, so I'm not interviewing anybody pertinent to injuries. Injuries have always been, illnesses, what have you, have always been a difficult, slope for me, and I try to stay away from them. In other words, like, I don't like to say to somebody, "Hey, you're not hurt. Go out there and play."
Right.
Oh, really? You don't know me, and you're not me. You're not an NFL player. You're not trying to play with what I'm trying to play with. So don't tell me that you know what my injury is, because you don't. And also to the medical personnel of a respective team, if I'm to criticize, hey, why is this guy playing or not playing? I would be basically challenging the medical team. And those people, those men and women, are incredibly skilled, and they have a lot of protocols they have to deal with, and they have a lot of boxes that have to be checked before they can turn a player loose. So at the end of it, I don't like to challenge anyone or anything when it comes to an injury situation.
The D-Man, Dennis Manoloff, and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, going to be breaking down Emmanuel Acho's comments on the Browns. And are you still confident in Baker Mayfield, and what's your confidence level? We'll be right back on Sports4CLE right after this.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Earlier today on Fox Sports 1, Speak for Yourself, Emmanuel Acho broke down Baker Mayfield, and are the Browns too confident in the Brown signal caller?
Yes, and I'm starting to be confident that the Browns are insane. The literal definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. Browns, management, how can you be confident that Baker's going to play his best ball down the stretch when you all are doing these same things over and over? You're rolling out an injured Baker Mayfield. You're asking Baker to throw the ball 20-plus times a game. You're acting as if though Baker is healthy and he's not healthy. Doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. So, Browns, for you all to have some sort of expectation that Baker's just going to miraculously play his best ball down the stretch is insane. It's just not going to happen. So, it's all in the numbers. Baker got injured even more so in that Cardinals game. He took that hit. Remember, Baker played 6 games prior to that. Completion percentage sitting at 67. Passing yards a game sitting at 245. Passer rating sitting at 98. Since then, completion percentage down to 56. Yards per game down to 188. Passer rating down to 80. He's clearly gotten worse as he has gotten more injured. Baker already wasn't playing great when he was healthy. But the numbers are obvious that he is now playing worse. So how can you look at a Baker Mayfield who is statistically depreciating? How can you look at a Baker Mayfield who is clearly injured? How can you look at a Baker Mayfield who is getting no better and verbalize that we expect him to get better down the stretch.
Let's bring the D-man, Dennis Manoloff from WTAM 1100 and 106.9 FM. D-man, with what you've seen from Baker Mayfield over the last 5 games or so, what is your confidence level in Baker Mayfield at this point for the rest of the season?
Not that big. I don't disagree with anything that Acho said. That's on point and very accurate. It's one of the reasons why I didn't understand why Baker Mayfield played against the Lions. I wish he would have rested. And, you know, to the previous segment when we were talking about how I don't question injuries, I wonder why guys get sent out there. But I will sit there and acknowledge, okay, they have their reasons. That's the difference between me and a lot of people when it comes to injuries. But I would have thought they would have wanted Baker to rest during the Lions game. If Case Keenum can't beat the Lions, then you don't deserve to be in the playoff hunt anyway. But as far as what that show said, yeah, he's been struggling. Baker has, because of the wing, you know, the off wing, the left shoulder, and then also the knee and the ankle. And I don't know. Maybe the bye will provide the extra rest he needs to give him the push. The problem is the stretch run is full of pretty darn good teams that can get to the quarterback, starting with next Sunday, again, Sunday from this upcoming one, against, oh, by the way, the Baltimore Ravens. So what are you going to do differently this upcoming Baltimore game when you face the 8-man box? Because you know the Ravens are going to do the same thing they always do. So they're going to dare Baker to beat them. Is Baker magically going to throw for 400 yards? If he does, then where was that in Baltimore? So I do think you're potentially running into a hamster wheel situation where Stefanski digs in and won't give up the play calling, and Baker digs in and doesn't want to sit, and you just get the same kind of results.
Now, D-man, the one thing that I will say, because I almost feel like this bye week, the bigger concern is the other injuries that he's tacked up, because you're not going to heal that torn labrum in a week. It's not going to happen. But when it comes to the knee injury and that planting foot that he had been dealing with previously, you know, I feel like if you're able to kind of get those at least healed up and rested up, I almost feel like you're not going to, like you said, he's not going to throw for 400 yards, but at least maybe some of those deep shots that they were able to hit can free up the middle of the field for that running game as well.
Agreed. I mean, it would be hard for me to believe that Mayfield would be worse off entering this second Baltimore game than he was entering the first, given that he's going to have had a lot of rest and the ability to try to recuperate. Who knows what's happening in his body, what exactly is hurting, and how much it's hurting. But you know, what I've always tried to do too is, if a player is healthy enough, and that's the operative word, enough. If the player's healthy enough to play, then you judge that player on his performance. You can't sit there and go, well, what did you expect? He was hurt. Well, how can anybody possibly do anything with an injured this or an injured that? No. You go out there and play in the NFL. All bets are off, if you will. Then that's it for the injury excuses and explanations. And now it's time to judge the player on his performance.
Now, Andrew Berry, Browns general manager, spoke to reporters a couple days ago, and I feel like, you know what, I'll let him talk about evaluating the players' performances instead of just 1 year, but as a whole throughout their career with the Cleveland Browns. This is what Andrew Berry had to say.
I'll be honest, it's probably more art than science. You know, I wish it was as easy. I could give you, you know, it's kind of straightforward answer in terms of, hey, it's, you know, this is how you wait and this is how you do it. But it is a little bit more. It is a little bit more feel. It is a little bit about, you know, looking at things, you know, without emotion, and ultimately, you know, trying to be fair to your team and your organization. So I wish I had. You know, a more formulaic response for you, but it really is a little bit more art than science.
Now, D-Man, I know that in today's day and age, we kind of live in the moment. We kind of ride and die by every single week. But, you know, how difficult do you think it is for the evaluation process of the way that the season has kind of gone, where you must have a tale of two halves so far this season?
When you talk specifically about Baker?
I'm talking about the team as a whole, evaluating the team in general.
Yeah, I mean, it is difficult to figure it out. I mean, just look at the defense as a microcosm. The defense has had some really bad games, but they've also been really good in certain spots, in certain games. I would submit majority of games, the defense has been good. But how do you evaluate the offense? I mean, what's the status of, how do they view Baker Mayfield? You know, do they allow for the injuries? Do they say, okay, if we get a healthy version of Mayfield, we're going to win this game or that game, this game or that game? I don't know. It is difficult, especially with a 6-6 team that's been all over the map.
Now, D-Man, the other side of that, too, and I found this interesting earlier today, this courtesy of CBS Sports, but they put out the top 10 in terms of touchdown differential between offensive scored and defensive given up. And you can see Buffalo at the top there with plus 18, New England plus 13 in that metric. You can see down at 10, Cleveland tied with the Miami Dolphins at -3. And D-Man, I find that very interesting given the fact that early on in the season, you saw a lot of high-scoring affairs for the Browns. And yet, despite that fact, you know, you go back against the Patriots. Obviously, Browns got blown out in that game. You know, it almost feels like a tale of two halves, like we talked about before with the defense in particular, where, you know, early on the season gave up a lot of points against the Chargers, against the Chiefs, and then over these last few games played very well overall.
Yeah, Mac, and look at number 9 on that list, the Baltimore Ravens at -2, and yet they're 8-3. Okay, that's a winning team doing what winning teams do. They win. The Ravens, I counted it up last Sunday, and I did not include the Cleveland game. The Ravens could have lost. Of their 8 victories, they realistically could have lost 5 of those 8. But they didn't. And so they're 8-3 and sitting atop the AFC North. So you credit them for being a winning organization under John Harbaugh. But as far as the Browns go, it's such it's been such a mess en route to 6-6. It's been so disjointed. The only thing that's consistent with the Browns these days is the stuff coming out of the locker room after the losses. Oh, my fault. I'll take the blame. I got to be better. We'll do better. We'll fix our correctable mistakes every week. But what are we going to do? We're going to look up at the end of the year, and very likely they're going to be 9-8 or 8-9, and we're going to go, well, wait a minute. How come they never got around to fixing the correctable mistakes? So that's the only thing that's consistent about this team is the babble after the games.
more watching the tape more than anything that we hear.
Yeah.
But Demon and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, going to be breaking down whether or not the Browns can salvage this season and still make a postseason run. We'll be right back with Sports4CLE right after this.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson. Coming up a little later, we'll be talking Browns with Ashley Bastock. But earlier, Nick Wright on First Things First on Fox Sports 1 had this to say about whether or not the Browns can salvage their season and still make a postseason run.
Unfortunately, I don't think they can. This was supposed to be the season they go back-to-back above 500 for the first time since the 1980s, and that was the minimum threshold. Supposed to make the playoffs again, maybe get around further, get to the AFC Championship game. Some people even had them going to the Super Bowl, which never made sense to me because the Chiefs play in the AFC, but that's neither here nor there. And the reason that they're not going to get there is because the offense has fallen apart. The defense hasn't been great, but, you know, you do have Myles Garrett, who has 14 sacks, and Denzel Ward, who's been rated by PFF as the league's best corner. So why is it falling apart? Coach, to me, it's pretty obvious that Baker is incredibly injured and trying to play through it. I don't think they should have let him. They let him, and now I think their season is unsalvageable. I don't think he's going to get healthy. He'll get slightly healthier over the bye, but not healthy enough. I don't see a way, Coach, for them to win 4 of their final 6 as they would need to in order to salvage this season.
Now, I'll kind of disagree with that towards the end. I think that if they're able to, win a few of these games, especially in division, I think that they can go ahead and, get some tiebreakers and possibly make it into the back end of the postseason. If not, make a run towards the end of the year, especially against divisional opponents. But let's bring in the D-Man, Dennis Manoloff from WTAM 1100 and 106.9 FM. D-Man, just putting it bluntly, where do you think the Browns are at currently, and what chance do you give for them to make the postseason?
Well, Mac, I got my phone out. I know where they are. They're 12th in the AFC at 6-6. There's only 7 teams get in. But the good news is it's crowded. The 7th seed is held by the LA Chargers at 6-5. Unfortunately, the Browns lost to them head-to-head. And then the Bills and the Bengals are the other 2 wild cards currently at 7-4. Incredibly, the Browns still have the season in front of them. I mean, that is what the AFC parity or mediocrity, depending on the word you want to use, has given them. It's given them a chance, both in the wild card, and you say, well, how could they possibly be a contender in the division? I don't know, except if the Ravens were to go to Pittsburgh this weekend and get beat, then all of a sudden the Browns are looking at that Ravens game the following Sunday and saying, if we can hang a 2-game losing streak on the Ravens, all of a sudden they drop to 8-5 and we're 7-6 and we're right back in it. I know it sounds like pie in the sky, especially where the Browns have played. My point is, at 6-6, they aren't buried mathematically, and therefore they have a chance. But it is a slim chance because they're playing quality teams down the stretch. Even the Raiders, who aren't considered all that great, are above the Browns in the standings in the AFC. So it's going to be a very, very tall order for Cleveland to somehow get in. I don't even know if 10 wins would be enough. Maybe, maybe not. So it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right when it comes to the 10 wins, too, because, I mean, hell, even look back at 2007 where they got to 10-6 and they still weren't able to get in because of those tiebreakers. But one player who's going to have to stand out in order to and step up as he has so far this year has been Myles Garrett, who was Bleacher Report's MVP for the Cleveland Browns so far this season. D-Man, what are your expectations for Myles Garrett down the stretch? Obviously, division games throughout here, and then you have Aaron Rodgers mixed in with the Vegas Raiders. What do you expect out of Myles in this stretch run?
Sacks. Sacks and lots of sacks. I mean, Myles has been a sack master, and you know what? That's the main reason that you like him so much is his ability to sack the quarterback. I would like to see Myles have more of an impact in the run game and other situations around that surround the defense. But it's hard to quibble with Myles Garrett. He's answered the bell. He's taken on double teams, sometimes triple teams, and typically he doesn't complain about it. He'll acknowledge that he's doing it when he's asked about it, but he goes out there and he battles. And I have appreciated how hard Myles Garrett has played, how productive he has been, how much attention he's gotten from the other team to open up opportunities for other players. So, yeah, I wouldn't quibble with Myles as the Browns MVP to this point.
Now, on the other side, for years we've been talking about, who's going to be that running mate for Myles Garrett. And it seems like the Browns have found him because Jadeveon Clowney has performed phenomenally for what I was expecting coming into this year, playing well against the run. And then on the other side, too, he's been very good at rushing the passer. He hasn't gotten those sack numbers up, but he's been doing well at creating pressure. D-Man, at what point do we talk about, extending Jadeveon Clowney and, keeping him in Cleveland and keeping that bookend of Clowney and Garrett?
Well, first of all, Mac, what does Pro Football Focus say about Clowney? Okay, I don't want to say anything praising Clowney until PFF tells me what his grade is. I haven't checked yet, but it does appear. My eyeballs match up with what you have seen. It looks to me like Clowney has done some good things, even if the sack numbers aren't there. As far as trying to extend them, I don't know. My impression with Clowney was this was a make good situation in Cleveland where he was going to show the rest of the league that he is capable of dominating again. And I just think that it's probably going to wind up, if the season plays out the rest of the way where he does have good games, I just think he's going to price himself out of the Browns situation. That's my guess.
Dennis Manoloff and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to be breaking down the Cleveland Cavaliers and why they're not just built correctly, but they're built to sustain success. We'll be right back on Sports4CLE.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and Cleveland Cavaliers, look, folks, they are the winning team in town, and not only are they winning, they're built correctly, built with the young core. Evan Mobley and company playing well. Let's bring in Dennis Manoloff, the D-Man from WTAM 1100. D-Man, I know you've had plenty of great post games after a lot of Cavs victories so far this year. They're 12-10. What have been your general thoughts so far throughout this season on the Cavaliers?
They're the best 12-10 team I've ever seen, and that was meant as a compliment because this team has been ravaged by injuries and illness and is still 12-10 and also has played a wickedly difficult schedule and yet remained above 500. I love basically everything about this team. General manager Kobe Altman has done a fantastic job, and I'm not sitting here saying that I saw it coming. I did not. I thought that, coming off the first 3 years of the rebuild post LeBron 2.0, that we could very well be in for a 5, 6, 7 year rebuild. And I was like, oh boy, especially when this season started with 2 losses at Memphis and then home to Charlotte when the Cavs gave up a combined 255 points. I'm like, where's the defense? Oh no, this is trouble. The very next night, though, after the Charlotte home opener, the Cavaliers beat the Hawks 101-95, and I went, wow. Because the Hawks with Trae Young had been in the Eastern Conference Finals the year before. Young didn't shoot well. The Hawks shot like 38% from the field. And you sat there and you went, ooh, okay, maybe the Cavs can play defense. Then they go out west, and they punk the Nuggets and the Clippers right out of the gate on their 5-game trip. Then they finished the trip coming back to the East Coast and playing Charlotte and winning that game. So once that trip was over, I said, this team's for real. And they've proven it ever since. They're on a 3-game winning streak now, entering their game against Washington, which should be tough, should be a tough game. but they've won 3 in a row, all by decisive margins. And the first 2 legs of the trip, they blew out Dallas on Monday and they blew out Miami in South Beach on Wednesday. And to win in South Beach for this franchise is incredibly difficult to do. They hadn't done it since 2010. So it's a beautiful mix for this team. It's a young team. It's well coached. It has talent. It has height. It has athleticism. It can shoot a little bit. And, I can't wait for tip-off of the next Cavaliers game.
Well, and D-Man, to add on to that as well, I almost look at it, and I'm not saying that they are this team, but I look at the way that the Golden State Warriors were built up. They were drafted all together. And on top of that, they were predicated on defense early on especially, and it was the fundamentals of basketball that they were really excelling at early on, along with those three-pointers. I look at the way that this Cavs team is built. Obviously, they're not as good shooting the three, but, I look at the way that this team is fundamentally sound, looking at the way that they play. And the fact that they're young, they were all drafted pretty much outside of a couple of guys, Jarrett Allen especially too. But, it seems like they've built this up correctly, and the way that a lot of these contenders have been able to build up and sustain this success.
Yeah, I like where your mind is, although, as you said, it's going to take a long time before we see if the Cavaliers are ever worthy. These Cavs are worthy of being mentioned in the same sentence as the dynastic Golden State Warriors. But again, I get your point. Kobe Altman in one offseason has been spectacular. And honestly, I'll take it back to the beginning of last season. At the beginning of last season, the Cleveland Cavaliers did not have Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley, Lauri Markkanen, or Ricky Rubio. Those were the big 4 acquisitions. Of course, Allen came during last season, and then in the offseason, Markkanen from the Bulls, Rubio from the Timberwolves, and Mobley number 3 overall in the draft. The acquisitions of those 4 guys has changed the course of this franchise. There's no question about it. And now all of a sudden the Cavaliers are taking a different approach to how to win, and that is athletic bigs. I don't know that the NBA has seen, and I'm sure it's happened, but I don't recall it, a situation where you can run 3 guys out in a starting lineup, such as the Cavs do with Markkanen when he's healthy and available, and Allen when he's healthy. Of course, when they're all healthy and available. Markkanen, Allen, Mobley. Essentially 3 7-footers. I think Allen's closer to 6'10", and maybe Mobley's 6'11". But the point is, they all look like they're like giants. They have incredible wingspans. Most importantly, they're athletic bigs. These are athletic bigs, meaning they can be versatile. They can help you in so many ways. They're not plotting bigs like an Andre Drummond type. So the Cavs are trying to win with bigs, with tall ball. And I tell you what, so far, they have really bothered opposing offenses. That height, that length, that ability to close out, the ability to hop out. Like, it seems like Evan Mobley's everywhere on the court because he's quick and he's big and he's long. Same with Jarrett Allen. Even when Jarrett Allen is playing a classic post position, he doesn't shoot very much, outside the key. He's still everywhere because of his versatility, because of his quickness. And Markkanen is a sniper, so he can stretch you all the way to the three-point line. That's what's been, among many other things, so much fun to watch about this team, is the Cavs are trying to win a different way than people expected NBA teams to win in the 21st century.
Yeah, and D-Man, to even add on to your point as well, the other big man that they already had on the roster, Kevin Love, he was somebody who, obviously has been talked up in the past as a leader, but I feel like this year is where you're seeing that kind of difference in him, where not only is he, trying to score on offense, trying to hit the boards, but, you know, hell, he's getting in there and getting a few blocks, getting down in the post, not being afraid to get into a player's face on defense. You know, I really feel like Kevin Love is also bought in, and it really helps sell on what J.B. Bickerstaff and the job that they've done.
Mac, you're 100% correct. Wednesday night in Miami, Kevin Love spectacular. I think it's 22 points in 9 shots. And I praised him, and then when I praised him, my radio audience was saying, hey, Dennis, keep Kevin Love's name out of your mouth because all you ever have done is criticize him. Okay, you're right. I have. I've been critical on this very show of Kevin Love. You know why? Because I haven't liked what I've seen from Kevin Love post-LeBron 2.0 until this season. The first 3 seasons of the rebuild after LeBron left the second time, I didn't like that version of Kevin Love, and I wasn't the only one. You had an unproductive player, you had an often injured player, and you had a malcontent, it seemed. You had a guy who seemed to want to move on and go somewhere else and complaining about this and complaining about that, all the while getting paid a lot of money. So, yeah, I think he was justifiably criticized for the first 3 seasons. This season, I have loved Kevin Love. And if you want to call me hypocritical, fine, but I judge based on what I see. And what I've seen from Love this year is worthy of praise. So I'm fine with, turning on a dime and saying, yeah, Kevin Love has been really, really good, and he has accepted his role. He is now leading when I didn't think he was capable of it. He is leading from the bench as a veteran guy that guys go to and lean on for pearls of wisdom. You know he's had an effect on Darius Garland. He's probably having an effect on Evan Mobley, maybe even Jarrett Allen. So I've got nothing but, high praise for Kevin Love.
The D-man, Dennis Manoloff, thank you so much for taking out the time and joining me today.
You got it, Mac. Thank you.
Dennis Manoloff, once again, WTAM 1100 and 106.9 FM as well. You guys can catch him after the Cavaliers and Cavaliers post-game. But coming up next, we're going to be talking with Ashley Bastock and breaking down the Browns' defense as well as what we have seen so far from Denzel Ward. We'll be right back on Sports4CLE after this.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
I am powerful beyond my wildest imagination.
I will define my future.
I will keep challenging myself to improve.
Because I am a future leader of this great nation.
I will be responsible for raising a beautiful family.
And educating not only my generation, but many more to come.
I will make a difference in my community.
And I will stand up for what I believe in.
I will not settle for simply chasing my dreams. I will achieve them.
Because I was given a chance.
An opportunity.
A home.
At Family, Career, and Community Leaders of America.
The ultimate leadership experience.
FCCLA has been one of the greatest experiences of my life.
It's made me who I am today.
Join us. We'll build a new future together.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and one of the big stars that we've seen, one of the breakout players that we've seen so far this year has been Donovan Peoples-Jones, wide receiver out of Michigan for the Cleveland Browns so far this season. And Andrew Berry spoke about the young receiver earlier this week.
Yeah, I'll be honest with Donovan. He's probably come along more quickly than I would have anticipated when we drafted him, and that's a credit to him. I think in terms of his next steps, obviously he has really great opportunity in front of him. I think part of it is he's probably been a little bit stop and start this year, with a little bit on the injury side of things. But he's obviously has and will continue to kind of play a major role in the passing game for us this year. So it's an incredible opportunity for him to continue to make plays and to ultimately help us win games.
Let's bring in Ashley Bastock, Browns reporter for cleveland.com. And Ashley, thank you for taking out the time. And to start things off, Donovan Peoples-Jones, he's had, like what Andrew Berry mentioned there, he's had that kind of stop and start season when it comes to his injuries. But, the good that we've seen from Donovan Peoples-Jones really lends to positives for his future.
It does. And, I think so much about what he brings to the table is different than the receivers he's played with on the Browns, right? Like, he's bigger than most of them. He's like 6'2", and obviously has had all of these really athletic traits going back to high school when he was a 5-star recruit and the top receiver in his class. So I really think, given the state of the Browns offense right now, they really need Donovan Peoples-Jones more than ever. I really think this is his moment coming up. I do think he's ready for it. But I think just given everything we've seen these last few weeks and what this offense has been struggling with, if he can have some breakout games coming up here, that's going to be huge. And obviously, like you alluded to, his year's been kind of stop and start. He's had this groin injury that he's been having to contend with. And, I wonder, if the Ravens game wasn't so important last weekend, if he would have played at all. So I'm really curious to see how he looks coming out of this bye week, going into that second matchup with the Ravens.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the Ravens matchup there as well, because Kurt Warner, we talked about him earlier in the show, but he did a breakdown on a big pass play that would have gone from Baker to Donovan Peoples-Jones, and this is what he had to say about the drop from Donovan Peoples-Jones on Sunday night.
Here's the next play. A little hard play action. Okay, we're going to run this play we call honk, where it's off of a corner, and then he stems and comes back this way. Now, a lot of people might come out and go, Baker, you had these two guys open right here. Yes, he does. But this is what this play is designed for, to get an overplay by the free safety and hit the chunk play back down the middle of the field. He gets out there, he flips his feet, dime, right on the money, 10-yard line. We are set up not only to get points, but set up to score a touchdown. Okay, we'll look at it from the other view, just so you see the kind of throw it was. Sets up, guy in his face, flips his feet, boom, drops a dime. Should be caught every single time in the NFL, drops the ball on the 10-yard line, and we get no points on that particular play.
And now, Ashley, looking at that play, not just that play in general, but also taking a look at some of the criticisms for Baker Mayfield as well. It really seems like it's all on the offense as a whole, and not just any one particular player. Especially Donovan Peoples-Jones on that play. I understand it's a drop, but at the same time, it really seems like it's the offense as a collective that needs to kind of step up and make those plays.
Yeah, 100%. And I also think the big issue with the offense lately is maybe not so much adapting to the pieces that are available, the pieces that are healthy. And I think obviously in the Ravens game, a big issue was losing Jack Conklin in the first quarter, because having to adjust on the fly when something like that happens, when you lose an all-pro tackle, is extremely difficult. And obviously Jed Wills has been struggling a little bit this year too, after suffering that ankle injury in the season opener. So I think sometimes when you look at Baker Mayfield's comfortability in games, that might have something to do with it, that those, one guy's been in and out with Conklin, and Jed Wills has been really fighting through that ankle injury there for most of this year. So I think that's part of it. I do think, a catch like that, if it hits you in the hands, it has to be a catch, right? Like, that's pretty much universal in the NFL. But I think it's not like the receivers are constantly dropping passes, and that's the main issue for some of Baker Mayfield's numbers. It's not like he's missing all of these throws. There are some drops in there, even though we've seen him have a tendency to sail some of these throws this year. But I think all around, the adaptability or the lack of adaptability and how opposing defenses are playing them has been really key in this rough stretch of about 5, 6, 7 games here.
Now, to flip things onto the other side of the ball, on the defensive side, Denzel Ward, early on in the season, he was somebody who was tend to be targeted by opposing offenses. Now has really seemed to turn things around. This from Pro Football Focus's Twitter. And you can see under 25 years old in their career, Denzel Ward just underneath Jair Alexander across the NFL. And so, Ashley, when it comes to Denzel Ward, it really seems like his play has come on strong over the last month, maybe month and a half or so.
It really does. And that entire secondary, that entire Browns defensive backfield has kind of come along with him. And that's really, really great to see. And I think he's especially been really instrumental in forcing some of these takeaways lately. And, the Browns defense has talked about that repeatedly this year, especially early on. They struggled. They were ranked towards the bottom of the league. I think they only had 10 takeaways going into that Ravens game. I believe the defense is up to 14 now without having the numbers in front of me. But I think he just has been so disruptive, and you've gotten the production from Greg Newsome that you needed back there, and overall just really nice. I think Grant Delpit has been coming along. Obviously JJ3 makes some big plays as well. So overall, I think the defense right now is a bright spot, and obviously getting 4 interceptions against Lamar Jackson, that doesn't happen. So really, really stellar effort from them against the Ravens as well, obviously.
And I remember you asking Joe Woods and pretty much everybody about the identity of this team. And it seems like, they were able to come out and be aggressive against the Ravens on that Sunday night game. Do you think that you're seeing kind of a turn with this defense especially? And do you think that they're going to be able to keep up that aggressiveness when it comes to the blitzing that we saw on Sunday night as well?
Optimistically, I think that's the hope, right?
Right.
My one hang up, and it's very, very small, is that we're not too far removed from that Patriots game when they gave up 45 points. Obviously, then you have Myles Garrett coming out and saying we couldn't make adjustments. You have John Johnson III coming out and saying it seemed like the Patriots just threw everything at us, some of these reverses and things like that we've struggled with all year. It's like they watched the film and planned around all of that, which obviously is what good teams do and good offensive coordinators. And obviously Josh McDaniels for New England is that. So my one hang up, the one thing I'm worried about is if we see a larger sample size of good teams, if they are able to kind of replicate what the New England Patriots and Josh McDaniels did against this defense, and if they're able to do it with the same success. Now, obviously, in an ideal world, you hope that served as a learning point, as a turning point, and that they can move on from that. But obviously the Lions, I think, tried to replicate that. They weren't able to do so effectively. And then you play the Ravens. Lamar's a different animal entirely. He had an off game on top of that. So I just am really curious as we go down the stretch of this season, how that team is going to respond from that Patriots game and how well other teams maybe try to utilize some of the things that New England showed this defense really struggles with this year.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about here as well when it comes to the defense is it really seems like once you get JOK fully healthy, Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, get him full speed, full send at that point, I look at the way that he's played, and it seems like he really makes that defense go at that point as a centerpiece, excuse me.
Oh, yeah. I think JOK has shown early in his rookie year, even though it's been kind of like what we were talking about with Donovan Peoples-Jones, a little bit stop and start. I really think you see that growth from him. I really think he just gets it. He plays so fast. I know my colleague Doug Maurice has a joke like, can he play offense too? Like, you want JOK out on the field regardless of what he's doing. But really, I think this is a guy with all-pro potential here. Overall, just a really, really bright spot. It's sort of amazing that he fell in the draft to when he did, and the Browns were able to still scoop him up because that's a guy that could have gone in the first round based on the production we've seen so far.
Oh, absolutely. If I'm Andrew Berry, I'm sending them a Christmas card, absolutely, and making sure that they get a nice Christmas present this year. But Ashley Bastock, cleveland.com, and I are going to take a timeout. When we come back, we're going to be talking more about what the Browns should be doing coming out of the bye week and getting to our shining star for this week. We'll be right back on Sports4CLE.
Welcome back. Back to new friends, new classroom, and learning new things. Back to wearing shoes, man, like real shoes. Back to rushing to class. Back to having questions. Lots of questions. Back to vending machine dinners. Back to too much caffeine, too late at night, but feeling like it was a night well spent. Back to pursuing your dreams and taking control of your future. Come back to go forward. Try C, where futures begin.
Welcome back to Sports4CLE. I'm Mac Robinson, and we're talking with Ashley Bastock of cleveland.com. And Ashley, you know, the Browns coming out of their bye week, they have this tough stretch to end the year, starting with the Baltimore Ravens. If you're Kevin Stefanski and the coaching staff, what is the first thing that you're going to try to attack and try to correct coming out of this bye week?
Well, I really hope they kind of take this concerted look at the playbook like they did in 2020 from everything we know. You know, I think what's so important, and I alluded to it at the top of the segment here, is that they need to make this offense work for the pieces they have who are healthy now. That is the biggest key. They have to put their pieces that are healthy now, figure out a way to put them in a position to succeed. That's from Baker Mayfield on down. Like, you look at Baker Mayfield's ability this year, what he's having trouble with. And I really think it's just a matter of becoming more adaptable. And, you know, for me, the prime example was in that Ravens game, the final Browns drive of the game. Kareem Hunt is injured. He can't be in because of that calf tightness he had. And obviously he had just come back from a calf injury. So instead of putting Nick Chubb in the game, which obviously is not an ideal situation, typically under 2 minutes, you would want Kareem in because he has this valuable added element of what he can do in the pass game as well. But I think at the end of the day, you kind of need to be willing to adapt more on the fly and maybe not 100% relying on analytics in those situations and saying, hey, why don't we put Nick Chubb in the game, even though this isn't normally when we would use Nick Chubb. He's a guy who could rip off a really long run in a key moment when we need it, and the game is on the line. So something like that for me is like the prime example of you really, really need to get more adaptable for the pieces that you currently have. And I think when it comes to the bye week, obviously we know a lot of the players have kind of gone left town for a few days, and that rest is important. But I think the work that the coaching staff has to do and what Kevin Stefanski has to do looking at this playbook is really going to define this team coming into next week and these last handful of games.
Ashley Bastock at cleveland.com. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on with me today.
Thanks.
Of course. And Ashley Bastock, you guys can follow her on Twitter, Ashley Bastock 42 on Twitter as well. Well, each week here on Sports4CLE, the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students from across the state of Ohio. And once a year, the Partners in Education program recognizes a school as the School of the Year. We salute Stowe High School, the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education School of the Year.
Hi, I'm Pat McDonald, Ohio Lottery Director. Every year, our Partners in Education program names a School of the Year. And this year, I'm excited to announce Stowe Monroe Falls High School as a winner of the School of the Year. We're proud of the students and staff, and we're excited to present them with this award. Now here's Governor Mike DeWine with a message for the students and staff.
Thanks, Director McDonald. Congratulations to everyone at Stowe Monroe Falls High School in Summit County. Your hard work in and out of the classroom sets you apart. Keep up the great work. I hope you have a wonderful year ahead. Go Bulldogs.
At Stowe Monroe Falls, we're Bulldog proud.
We excel in academics, offering 22 AP courses.
We excel on the field and on the court too. We have 32 teams with winning records at the regional and state level.
Our music program is top notch. We are known as a top community for the music education. Every year, our musicians go out and compete and win at a state level.
And everyone in the Bulldog country gets involved. We have 37 activities and clubs for students.
We even have published authors on staff, 15% to be exact.
We're proud to be the Ohio Lottery's Partners in Education School of the Year.
Congratulations to Stowe Monroe Falls High School, the Ohio Lottery Partners in Education School of the Year. You can nominate outstanding students and teachers by visiting ohiolottery.com.
If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to ohiolottery.com. Find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star.
Congratulations once again to Stowe High School. That's going to go ahead and do it for us today. I have been your host. Coming up on Monday, we're going to have Dan Lobby and Kevin Arnold of the Voice of the Land podcast with Dave Bacon back in the host chair. Thank you all for watching. Have a great weekend on Sports4CLE.